because it does take more resources to educate kids like Levi than it is for regular students. But if this is your job to educate, no matter where the kid is at, learning wise, you have to accommodate them. So it's been, the best way I can kind of describe our journey so far has been like trial by fire. It's kind of like we just learn as we go. You know, I'm learning every day about things that will trigger him. Also, he also has a trauma disorder on top of the autism. Unfortunately, an incident happened about 3 years ago. DHS had to get involved. I filed a complaint of neglect and didn't realize, because he was still not completely verbal, I didn't know how he was internalizing everything until I started seeing stuff last year. And I was like, yeah, this is not a meltdown. This has nothing to do with autism. Something else is going on. And we went to a child psychologist, and he was officially diagnosed with a trauma disorder.
So it's like PTSD?
Yeah, like a kid's version of PTSD.
Okay.
So it's called an adjustment disorder due to trauma. So that's how they label kids. Like that's the kid version. I have the adult PTSD because a month later I got diagnosed with PTSD. So I didn't even know. I was raging for the last. That was getting dry, but I was raging for like the last 5 years and didn't realize it.
Yeah.
So I was busy supporting him, and I'm wondering why, like, I'm going like 0 to 100 on like the smallest thing. Like, I'll just get pissed off.
And you're in the Air Force.
Right.
So...
And then people were thinking that was from the Air Force. I said, no, that was the happiest years of my life.
Yeah, so that was
I was already out of the Air Force.
Yeah, a lot of people think PTSD only comes from people who serve.
Right.
Because of the things that they see when they serve.
Right.
But they don't realize, like, a regular person get PTSD, especially from everything, just we're 13 minutes in?
Yeah.
And everything you've told me, like,
yeah.
Makes sense.
And that's what my therapist says. She said it can just be, people just think it has to be like this over the top situation that can cause trauma. Everyone handles situations differently. So it can just be something that was traumatic to you that can bring on that episode. So that's why I never want to downplay people's experiences of what they went through. Like, people just think it has to be like this, like almost like a Hollywood movie type of like, you know, level of like, oh my God, you went through that? Like, no, like me, it was just like me.
Everybody's got their own thing, and
right.
It doesn't have to be extreme,
right?
But also it can be extreme,
right? So it was like, just trying to support him, being a single parent, being head of household, so making sure bills got paid. He was taken care of. A lot of stress. A lot, and I was not doing self-care at all. So the last time I've officially like gone on a vacation, and I'm not even counting the Jersey Shore because I don't count, it's been over 7 years. I have not like legit like been out of the East Coast. Well, no, that I take that back. I did go to San Diego 2 years ago, but that was only for a weekend. That wasn't even like a real vacation because you got to think about the time zone difference.
It takes about a day.
Right. So yeah, I have not. That's on my my bucket list to get some time away to kind of just reset. And yeah, it hasn't been easy. I can't sugarcoat it. It hasn't been easy. But what fuels me is what kind of started the advocating. You know, first it was him, of course, but then when I would get online and I was sharing things about Levi, because I'm a very transparent person when it comes to my life experiences, I started getting people messaging me, asking me questions about like, where'd you get him diagnosed at? And I think my son or my daughter or my cousin might have it, or
I wanted to go back to that when you were talking about you have these things online with it's almost a support group,
right?
And that was actually one of my questions I was going to ask. Yesterday, I talked to Spark Life, and they were talking about, we came to I always say this as well, a lot of people don't really care until it happens to them or something directly affects them.
Exactly.
So you getting information like this out there, and the fact that you wrote a children's book that shows, you know, say the name again, it's Echo... What is it?
Oh, The Adventures of Echo Boy and Ape.
No, the
Echolalia.
Echolalia.
Yeah.
You know, that's one thing I learned today that I didn't know. And I mean, I know autism is a spectrum, and there's a bunch of different things that kids can get asphyxiated on, but it's stuff like that needs to be shared because I'm sure somebody listening to this right now, I mean, just like you said, you can continue with the online and people are hitting you up, like, where'd you get them diagnosed and whatnot. So.
Right. Yeah, so going back, so it started with the pediatrician. So I always say, like, if you're not sure where to start, always start with your primary doctor first, because they always may have some type of resource to give to you. I was blessed enough that, you know, his pediatrician's office had already had the information for ChildLink, and it kind of just built from there. Actually, my network kind of was kind of built from inside out, meaning that the providers, they were constantly always giving me other resources. So then when I would contact those resources, then I would know someone else. It was almost like a 6 degree of separation kind of thing. You know this person, but then this person does this. And then why don't you check online and this? And then like social media kind of helps you connect the dots a lot too, when you use it for good and not for other reasons. But that's really helped tremendously. But it started with the pediatrician. Then it went to Elwin. And then right around when he was 3, we officially was able to get in, thank God, because the waiting time is ridiculous to try to get an evaluation. CHOP was talking about 14 months.
What is CHOP?
Children's Hospital.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. St. Chris was talking about 14 to 18 months. I'm like, well, by the time like we get in, he'll be like almost ready to go to kindergarten.
Yeah.
And then the Center for Autism, first they told me 6 to 12 months, but thank God I got a call from them. They were like, listen, we got an open spot. Someone canceled. I will take off of work. I will call out. Yes, we're going. So we got in there and we got the official diagnosis, and getting the official diagnosis was really difficult. I mean, cause I already knew, like I was already prepared for it, cause we were already in the mindset he has autism. We were just waiting for the official diagnosis so he can get Medicaid and get all those other benefits.
You can start the treatment.
Right. But it was still hard because I'm like, here I am. I'm sitting in this room with this doctor, with my son. I don't have any other like emotional support behind me to kind of like, how are you feeling? How are you processing this? I had to deal with that all. Like, mind you, I did not seek therapy around that time at all, because I thought I was just like, oh yeah, I got this. I'm good. And you know,
we're invincible.
Yeah, you have that feeling, but then it's like your brain can only take so much, because 5 years later, it just all came like crashing hard, like the end of last year. What triggered it, surprisingly, was sitting in the office talking to the child psychologist about possible things that happened that could attribute to Levi's adjustment disorder. And that triggered me like bad, like to the point like when we left, I got in the car and I was just like, it was almost like feeling like you were suffocating, and then like I was having like migraines.
Like a panic attack.
Yeah, and I didn't even. And I'm thinking like panic attack. This is another thing I learned. Like panic attacks is never. Sometimes it's not over the top panic attacks. Sometimes you can look like you're just calm, but you're just like shutting down slowly. You know what I'm saying? So it was like something's not right. So I contacted the employee assistance program with my job, and they got me in touch with a therapist, and I'm still seeing her now. Actually, matter of fact, we've been doing telehealth before the whole pandemic thing, so I was already used to like FaceTiming her and talking to her. But she was like, and I always get the same reaction when I tell anyone, when I really go into detail of things that have happened, like in the beginning between me and his dad, and like everything all the way up until this point, and I get the same reaction, like, what? Like, then my therapist was like,
because they've never experienced it,
right? And it was just like,
that's some shit they see on the TV,
right? Like, so like that's why like when I see stuff on TV, I'm like, yeah, been through that. Yeah, that's not too far fetched. But she was like, yeah, you have PTSD, and I was like, what? Because I'm thinking like how we were saying, like people in the military, right. they'll hear like the helicopter going over the house, or they'll hear
a gunshot, something loud, something. I'm not diagnosed with PTSD, but loud noises that I don't know where they come from.
Right.
They don't trigger me, but I immediately get like really upset when I
right.
unknowingly. You know?
And I just noticed with me, it'll be like a certain sound repetitively, a smell. And the crazy thing, I had to sit down with the entire team at Levi's school and explain to them because it was almost getting to the point where they were like trying to make it seem like he was just this like uncontrollable child. And I told them, I said, you're not only just dealing with autism, he has an adjustment disorder due to I just lost my train of thought. Adjustment disorder due to trauma. And the principal was like, well, we're not a mental health facility. So I looked right at her and I was like, I understand it, but you're also an education facility. And the first duty is to, one, make sure that every child is safe and every child is accommodated.
Yeah, and has the opportunity to
learn.
Same education as their peers.
Right. And I said, but even though you're not a mental health facility, you still need to understand what's going on with him. If I gave you copies of what the trauma therapist and his treatment plan is, you need to read it. Then what's the point of me giving it to you? And then, like I told them, I said, I have PTSD, so I can't relate with the autism to my son, but I can relate to the trauma disorder. So it could be as simple as a teacher trying to get him to do an activity he doesn't want to do, and that could set him off. That has nothing to do with autism. It's probably triggering something that he remembers. And unfortunately, because of the communication, he can never tell me what happened that day. And that's 3 years ago. And I was having this conversation with a friend a couple weeks ago. I carried a lot of guilt behind that. And it was like, and the best advice was, you can't carry that. You do the best that you can to protect your child. And unfortunately, people that are supposed to love him and protect him, they didn't, so that I'm constantly have to address in therapy, because real shit, I told his grandmother, I said, it'd be in your best interest we never cross paths. It really just be in your best interest.
Because you have that, one, they're supposed to be family.
Right.
So immediately you're supposed to have that trust, supposed to.
Right.
Not everything's black and white, but
right.
When you, especially your child, like any, right. I mean.
Because I told his dad, I said, y'all know I don't play when it comes to my child. I'll burn the whole block down to prove my point.
Almost any mother would, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not, yeah. So, yeah. When I say trial by fire, trial by fire.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's not taken lightly.
Yeah.
What were some of the, what was the process of coming up with the events leading to, I mean, you kind of already explained it with Echo Boy and ABC Girl, but how long have you been writing books? Because you got a couple there.
Yeah, actually, funny story. I started writing back in high school, and I want to shout out my English teacher, Mrs. Stam, who just really, and I told her this on Facebook. I said, she remembers all her students, but I was like, you probably don't realize, like, when I used to write these short stories and I used to write other things in English class, and how she would grade them and give me all these wonderful, encouraging messages on these assignments. I said that gave me confidence that I could do some type of writing, that I was capable of writing stories that people can enjoy, reading. And I mean, I was only like 15, 16 at the time, but that impacts kids. Like, you don't realize, like, things you say and do when you're a teenager, when you're unsure of yourself and you don't know, like, the path you're going to take as an adult. Like, did I think, like, at 16 I was going to be a published author in my late 30s? No. But, yeah, that, and also I wrote a poem to this guy that I had a crush on. Typical teenager stuff. This is before smartphones. Yes, yeah. I'm that old. Before smartphones and all that stuff, right? And he read it, didn't say anything about it, but whatever. But that actually sparked something about tapping into emotions and writing while you're in that moment. So when I wrote those poetry books, all of those poetry books, I wrote in the middle of Levi was in a meltdown when I was raging, and I didn't understand, like, why I was feeling the way I was feeling back then. And I just wrote through all of it. So, like, when people go back and they read it, I don't mean to invoke emotion, but people start crying. I'm like, I'm really not.
Yeah, well, it's because you needed an outlet, and that's what you knew.
And I'm just grateful that it connects with people when they read it. And yeah, it over the years, like, I was writing and I was doing open mics, but I was so scared of publishing. One, because I was like, oh, that must be just super expensive, and that's just a lot of money, and I don't even think my work is good enough to put into a book for someone to read. And I just want to say thank you to one of my friends, Icy Lee, who she messaged me one day and she was like, I love your poetry. You're always posting stuff on Facebook, but you really need to be like published. I'm like, I don't have the money for that. I'm a single parent. I'm